All right, well, let's go ahead and jump forward to a couple more stories here. These are just these next three stories, and I'm going to blast through them fairly fast. I mean, we'll hit the finer points, and Micah, please feel free to interject at any point. But I just wanted to share some of these because since we haven't had a show in 2 weeks, these next three come from articles that I wrote this week, last week, and the week before for the Last American Vagabond. And they have kind of become perennial issues on this show as we follow the still continuing fallout of the COVID-19 panic and the lockdowns and the authoritarian response, which I would say never forget too, that we saw all around the world, and kids being put in masks and bubbles in their heads and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's not over, and I recognize that there's still some implications to come. This article I titled "World Health Organization Concludes 76th Assembly as Debate Over the Pandemic Treaty Rages On." And this was late May when the World Health Organization, they gathered for their 76th yearly assembly. And although the so-called pandemic treaty or the pandemic accord was not on the official agenda, it was being discussed either way. You had U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra, who was there speaking to journalists, and this is a quote from him. He says, "I think we'll get an accord in place if everyone realizes that our window before this next pandemic, this next health threat, is probably not far away." So take that how you will. And that's coming from this U.S. Health Secretary here speaking at the World Health Organization as they discussed this. And so they discussed a number of issues, including where we're going to go next. And the head of the World Health Organization, the so-called Director General Tedros, he said that this is a generational opportunity to negotiate this strong accord, and this moment must be seized. Quote, "We are the generation that lived through the COVID-19 panic, so we must be the generation that learns the lessons it taught us and make the changes to keep future generations safer." And then you had another official who was there from an NGO saying that the treaty was weak and it needed to be stronger. "Voluntary measures are not good enough," he was quoted as stating. So the direct evidence that some people who are debating this so-called pandemic treaty are really calling for the World Health Organization to have supranational powers to, actually say, hey, U.S., we've declared this a pandemic, and all of our member states must go along with the following measures or face sanctions and things like that. That's really what this is about. And so there are people saying this is an attempt to erode national sovereignty, and not just crazy people on the internet. And I mean that facetiously. I think people have legit reasons to worry about this, despite the fact that in March, the World Health Organization Director Tedros said that it was quite simply false and fake news, and quote, no country will cede any sovereignty to the World Health Organization. So it came straight from him, if you want to believe that. But in mid-May, there was I'd never heard of this, Micah.
I think it's just like their word, they're saying they're not ceding sovereignty. You know what I mean? They'll say that your governors, your representatives chose it. Like every treaty that.
Yeah, this was voted on. What are you talking about? We didn't take anything. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this. I'd never, until I found this when I was researching this, the Sovereignty Coalition. Don't know much about them, what they represent, but I thought it was interesting because they were actually doing something good here, whatever they normally represent. They held a press conference in mid-May, the Sovereignty Coalition, which is, I think, pretty much all Republicans, members of the U.S. House, and they held a press conference speaking out about the dangers of the pandemic treaty and specifically the threat that they say it poses to nation states. One of their more well-known members is Lauren Boebert of Colorado. She said, quote, "This is not about public health. The World Health Organization made it clear they censor anyone who does not agree with their agenda to control every aspect of people's lives. They want total control over vaccinations, digitization of health records, and your travel." And I can say that statement, the first half, is definitely true. I was censored in fall of 2020 and deleted off YouTube when I was given my punishment, it said that this video, which was my final strike, did not align with World Health Organization policy. So if you say something that the World Health Organization says is false or misinformation, disinformation, you guys lived through it. You could be deleted off the internet. And the Sovereignty Coalition said that the WHO is a, quote, supranational UN agency that is effectively controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. They say that the influence of the CCP is evident because Dr. Tedros is, quote, advancing the CCP's interests and bringing about a post-constitutional America and global governance dominated by the party. And I will say, look, whether or not you want to think that that's a totally accurate statement, controlled by the CCP, the fact is that behind the U.S., and then Bill, the number two state funder of the World Health Organization is China, and then right after that, the biggest non-state funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So there is a Chinese government connection to the WHO through the funding, and right there with the U.S. as well.
Real soon, it's on the agenda. I got an article about it. We might not get to it this episode, but Bill's going to go meet with the president of China, Bill Gates is.
I saw that. Yeah, so there's some strong Chinese connections going on here. So the Sovereignty Coalition they're another organization bringing awareness of this. And I also found there's a UK member of Parliament, Andrew Bridgen, who said that the WHO Treaty and the amendments to the international health regulations represent a, quote, huge grab of power by unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. He gave a speech in the Parliament on April 17th and said, quote, we should have a referendum because sovereignty belongs to the people. It's not ours to give away. And he also mentioned that the World Health Organization employees have diplomatic immunity and they cannot be prosecuted for potential crimes, which, if true, is pretty disturbing. You had other people coming out and speaking out. I just kind of started going through this and listing, the people speaking out against this. This is, going on, though. This is an ongoing situation because the World Health Organization is expected to finalize this treaty in May 2024. There's going to be more meetings before then we kind of get bits and bits, but really it comes down to May 2024, a meeting that they're going to have where they will vote whatever the final language of the text comes out to be. And there is a very real possibility that it could, in some ways, give the UN, the World Health Organization, powers over national governments in the way that they respond to alleged pandemics, which is a pretty frightening idea.
I'd say it's pretty frightening.
Yeah, because that means if they say there's another pandemic, like remember the health secretary of the U.S. said, we have a brief window before this next threat is coming. So if this treaty were to get signed, and then let's imagine shortly after that something were to claim to have happened, it could give the UN and some powers to dictate what national governments around the world do.
They'll send in the calculators.
Yeah, they'll send in the peacekeepers, right?
Yeah.
Wow, so pretty crazy stuff. I know many of you are following that story. Just wanted to hit that one up. Again, you can find this at thelastamericanvagabond.com. Now, to pick that up and continue with this, with some other things the World Health Organization is doing, and this is just, again, a reminder that the COVID-19 narrative or just the pandemic narrative is not maybe over and done. I do think we're seeing more and more focus on climate change and stuff, but it's all ultimately, it seems just to be about control, taking away your privacy and your liberties. This one, though, was also around early June. World Health Organization and European Commission partner for digital health, was what they call it, with new COVID-19 digital certificate, right? Just when you thought it was over, like, what do you mean? I thought that things are back to quote unquote normal or a new normal, right? They announced that it's not over yet. The European Commission and the WHO announced that this partnership is going to be the beginning of a digital vaccine passport system for the world. The announcement comes after the EU had a similar certificate, digital COVID certificate, which was begun in June 2021 during the COVID panic, and it was set to expire this month, June 30th. According to the EU, they claim that there were more than 2.3 billion digital certificates issued in that time period for people who were vaccinated, and this was for people to travel across the European Union during this insane time. And the World Health Organization and their partners in the EU now say that they're basing what they learned through that EU digital COVID certificate for this new program for the World Health Organization. Dr. Tedros says the digital certificates will, quote, help people everywhere receive quality health services quickly and more effectively. And as I noted here, ironically, the European Commission and WHO say that the EU vaccine passport, that when they used it, it helped, quote, facilitate safe and free movement. Safe and free movement is not having to ask governments and show pieces of paper or digital documents to get around, but that's what they call it. So yeah, now the WHO is saying they're going to establish a global system that will, quote, help protect citizens across the world from ongoing and future health threats, including pandemics. So they're using the pandemic excuse, but it's also showing that future health threats. That means whatever the heck they say, whether it's aliens that we keep hearing more about, or a war, or terrorism, or communism, or whatever. It's all about that digital ID, getting people on these systems. The press release says that this is a continuation of an agreement signed in December 2022, and that this will, quote, enhance strategic cooperation on global health issues and bolster a robust multilateral system with the World Health Organization at its core. And when I hear things like that, multilateral, it's clear that these organizations, these institutions, there's a reason people call them globalist. And I used to kind of scoff at that when people like Alex Jones and others have been saying it forever, but I think it is accurate to what, or internationalist, if you will. It's what these people want. They definitely don't see value in national sovereignty, and people like Henry Kissinger and others have said it openly for decades now. And just the kind of last thing to make it clear, this is a worldwide thing, not just for the European Union. They said that this is a first building block as part of the World Health Organization's Global Digital Health Certification Network, which will develop, quote, a wide range of digital products to deliver better health for all, And they said that the COVID pandemic response taught them that there is, quote, an existing gap and continued need for a mechanism to support verification of health documents and for pandemic preparedness and continuity of care. So this is just the first building block in an institution, the GDHCN, that's going to be used for digitization of existing vaccine certificates. It says for verification of cross-border prescriptions and verification of vaccine certificates within and across international borders. And so, again, they emphasize they're building off of their experience of the regional networks of COVID vaccine certificates. So, and I also just want to add one more thing that I reported back in 2021. Somebody sent this to me, this EU document from 2019. What day, I can't remember what year exactly it was or what month it was, but it was in 2019. And this is an EU roadmap on vaccination, Q3 2029, released by the European Commission. And so Q3 2019, we never heard the word COVID-19 vaccine passports until 2020. But you look at their timeline here, and it says beginning in 2019 all the way through 2021, feasibility study for the development of a common EU vaccination card. And then in their timeline, 2022, commission proposal for a common vaccination card passport for EU citizens. And this was a roadmap from late quarter 2019 till the next couple of years before we even heard the word COVID pandemic. And so it seems to me, like based on this document, that the EU is already preparing for a roadmap. I mean, they call it a roadmap for vaccine passports and documents. So even before we heard the words COVID, these plans were already in the works. I think that's worth mentioning. And they're now planning to expand this to be a global thing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because part of that, where they say they learn and they have to do more to keep everyone safe. In the beginning, I kind of just waited patiently, but I think it's kind of like a beater saying, you got to stay with me because keep you safe from all those other people. Like really, I'm going to keep you safe.
It is. I mean, I've seen people kind of draw that comparison and look at the relationship, the involuntary, non-consensual relationship between the people and the government, and it's like these are all signs of a narcissist, of somebody manipulating you, abusing you, trying to mess with your head. So that's their tactics, right? The carrot or the stick, and we saw that during COVID, right? We'll give you lap dances and free donuts and free pizzas and this and that, or you can't go anywhere.
Well, you got the already people that already played the game the first time around. Some did that and then kind of saw through it because a lot of info came out, honestly, because reality asserts itself, right? And so you'll have some people that played the game the first time around because they were scared or whatever, that won't play it the next time around. But you'll have some people that because they played it, whether they thought about it or not, probably those who didn't think much about it but just reacted, they're going to double down. They're going to want, they're going to be more, fanatical. They're going to be more partisan. They're going to be more, like a vigilant individual trying to convert everyone, or prosecute, or make them wear their masks, or whatever the new thing is, So yeah, those people will be there waiting to do their bidding as they shout out from the top, panic, we need you to get everybody in line for us because we don't have the ability to do it ourselves. Just because we have all this money and power doesn't mean we have any friends, So it's just kind of sad.
Yeah, like I said with the pandemic treaty situation, I mean, I feel like in some ways all we can kind of do is watch because, I mean, obviously go out there, spread information. If you're in the EU, protest this. But I do think, again, the World Health Organization, there's a lot of moving parts here. They're working on a treaty, an accord, changing international health regulations that are supposed to, that the vote's supposed to happen in May 2024. And if that goes through a certain way, it could end certain levels of national sovereignty, or at least allow this globalist organization to step over some bounds that have previously never been stepped over. And at the same time, that same organization is working with the EU, which many people have long suspected was part of a move towards kind of globalist unions, North American Union, South American Union, European Union, working together to push out vaccine digital certificates as a model for the world. So those two things coming together don't seem to really bode well for the future of travel, privacy, things like that. And it's really, like I said earlier, I mean, I think it is terrifying. We're trying to talk about it, bring it to your awareness. We're not trying to say live your life in fear, but if you are concerned about these things, I think at this moment what we could do is tell people. Like, there's definitely more and more, I think, of a call of exit the WHO. You know, the U.S. should stop funding it. I don't know if we'll see that, right? But I think those are conversations worth having.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.